Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us tonight. As you may or may not know, domestic abuse is a real issue in the Black lesbian community, in the queer community, in all communities overall. But tonight we're talking about, well, we're really having three amazing women share their stories of surviving abuse at the hands of someone who they thought loved them. They thought they were in a loving relationship, and it turns out that they weren't. So I just wanted to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Terri. I'm the founder and editor of BlackLesbianLoveLab.com. It's a blog that is focused solely on Black lesbian relationships, women who love women relationships. And I have here with me three, what happened? I lost one of my people I lost. But we have three women. We're going to share their stories tonight. And I'm just going to go ahead and give them an opportunity to tell us their short bio, and then we're going to get into their stories, okay? So let's start with Miss Terri. Well, let's start with someone else because Terri is driving. But let's start with Brittney. Brittney, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here tonight.
Hey, hi guys. So I am a lesbian identified Black woman, obviously, but I'm also a domestic abuse survivor. A couple times over. We make multiple mistakes, obviously. And I actually prosecuted my abuser. And it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I did a lot of work in LA working to show women how to do that and the free options that were available to them. Also with some mentoring programs and raising awareness in regard to how mental health relates to it, how just personal representation relates to it, and how to identify the traits of an abuser, what it looks like, what small little red flags you could pick up on, and just the importance of trusting your gut instinct. And I'm here to share my story about that today.
Thanks so much, Brittney. And our next person is Sandi. Sandi, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today?
Well, as you said, my name is Sandi. I have every relationship I've ever been in, every romantic relationship was abusive. It turned abusive. It wasn't abusive to start, but I ignored the red flags and it turned abusive. I'm here because I was a professional and I didn't think it could happen to me. I was the one coming to your rescue. I was the one, I was the superwoman. I was in the medic. I was in a medic vehicle. I was coming because you called 911. I didn't think that I was that person. And if I could give someone the benefit of my story, then I'm going to do that. That's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Sandi. Okay, and so last but definitely not least, we have Miss Terri here. Let me unmute her. Miss Terri, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today.
Hi, I'm Terri. I've identified as a lesbian all of my life. I never thought that I would be an advocate for domestic violence in the LGBT community, because growing up, I didn't think that it actually happens in lesbian relationships. I'm not only a victim, but I'm also a survivor, and I also help victims become survivors. I was involved with the woman for 10 years who was abusive from the very beginning, and enduring all of that abuse, I started picking up patterns of her behavior. And once I left that abusive relationship, I started becoming abusive verbally, not physically, but it's all the same to me. So I'm here to share my story as a victim slash survivor, but also to bring awareness to how being in an abusive relationship, you can also become that abuser. So that's why I'm here tonight, to share my story, to help someone come out of that abusive relationship and not pick up the patterns as becoming the abuser.
you said something really important here. Thank you so much, Terri, for sharing the fact that, sometimes we focus just on, the person who is perpetrating the abuse, but sometimes we end up being abusive ourselves. And I mean, there's a saying that says, hurt people, and that there's a reason for that.
Right.
You learn it and you basically perpetrate the same behavior that you don't really want to happen to you, but it's kind of like a reflex thing, like it's a learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So before I go any further, let me just say hey to everyone who's watching. If anyone has any questions for our panelists, please feel free to comment below. Please feel free to share this out. This is a really important conversation that we must have as a community. So hey Marie, hey the kid, hey Naja, Shanatel, Robin, Cynthia says, hello everyone, so courageous for you to tell your story, absolutely. Hey Marvette, Evie, hey Shy, Rome, Bridget, hey DM, hey Monica, Tanya, Imani. Thanks everyone for joining tonight and for sharing it out. Tag someone if you think this would be valuable to them. And again, I kind of want to start by talking about what does abuse generally start like? Maybe you can talk about what it started like for each of you, because I know sometimes we have a very specific idea of what abuse looks like, and it's not always that easy to identify. So anyone just jump in there and let us know, what abuse started out looking like for you.
My abuse started not having the house clean when my ex would come home. She liked it cleaned a certain way, and later on in the relationship I found out that she had OCD, like really, really bad. And it didn't matter if the dishes was done, if the dishes wasn't put away a certain type of way in the cabinets, she'll pull the dishes out and I would have to rewash them while she's standing there and put them away the way that she want them put away. So it started with the controlling part. And I want you to do this the way I say do it. And then it went from the controlling to no company, no friends around, no family. And then from there, it started like little, calling me the B word and the stupid. And so it started with little verbal, and then it became big verbal, and then it became embarrassing. And like I said, I think I mentioned to you, I was taking a test for school one day online, and she knocked on the door, and it took me a little bit longer than I thought. And I opened the door. She thought someone was in the house, and she just clocked me right in the eye. Just and I seen the signs, but I ignored the signs. It was the first relationship that I was in that someone actually showed they wanted to be with me for me. And yeah, yeah, like I seen the signs, I ignored the signs. When I seen that she was telling me I couldn't be with friends and I couldn't go visit my parents, I'm thinking, oh, she want to spend all her time with me. And it was like the deeper I got in, the more signs that I seen, the more I chose to ignore those signs. And when she blacked my eye, she actually bust a vessel in my eye, and I couldn't go to work for like 2 or 3 days. And it went from, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it, I'll never do it again. And she didn't do it for like maybe a week, but the moment things was out of order, it got to the name calling again. You stupid, you dumb, what's wrong with you? And if I looked at her the wrong way, then, the physical part came in. But it definitely starts with the mental. And, you start questioning yourself. Well, what am I doing wrong? And then from the mental, it goes to the verbal. And from the verbal, it definitely goes into physical.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share what their experience was like when it kind of like started out in a small way that maybe you didn't realize, and then until later on you were like, oh wait, this isn't love, this is something else?
For me, it started with, why do you talk like that? Why do you use those words? why are you using such big words? Why can't you use simple words? So controlling my speech, controlling how I communicated. And anytime that I would naturally try and use my vocabulary, I learned how to catch myself, because the instantaneous, that type of look was what I was faced with. And the fear that started within me was minor. Like, why are you talking like that? Why are you saying that to me? And then it would be more argumentative. You talk like you're white. You're not white. Why don't you behave like you're a Black woman? I thought it was. So anytime I had anything to say about how I spoke, it triggered a larger argument. And it went from there to controlling my finances. You need to pay my car note. You need to buy me a car. You need to pay the car note. You can't drive this car. Where are you going? Why are you going to the store without me? Little tiny things that I didn't pay attention to at first. All of them just started to snowball. And if I happened to look like I was about to shed a tear, oh, I'm sorry. I'll never say that again. I'll never do it again. Please forgive me. And then they started shedding tears. And then I was the one made to feel that I was the one in the wrong. I was guilty. So now I'm apologizing for how they treated me. And each time it starts just with the little tiny things. And then the next thing you know, you have a fist in your face or a hand around your throat. That's how it started. Each time, that's how it started.
Someone mentioned tone policing, which was basically what was happening with Sandi.
Yes.
She was basically telling you that you can speak in a way that makes her feel comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to adjust your speech to make her comfortable. Gotcha. Let's see. Kashia says. So Kashia says, I've gotten that a lot on how I spoke. I was told you act like you're better than because of my vocabulary.
Yes.
Yeah. Shannon says she just left a year of abuse. Shannon, I'm so happy for you that you were able to get away and that you are safe now. Hope you're in a safe place. Hi, Yaya. Thanks for joining us. Brittney, do you want to share a little bit? You said that you've had this experience a couple of times. You've been in an abusive relationship.
Yes. So I'll say the one that stands out. The little instances of abuse that it took me some time to recognize. It's just small moments of gaslighting and humiliation. So they started out as being extremely aggressive with pursuing me. She was telling me, I'm different than any girl that she ever met. And, she wanted to date me and be around me and she wanted to be exclusive, but all very, very fast. And then it went from that to let's spend time with your friends. But then when we're in front of my friends, embarrassing me. Why did you choose to wear that? That doesn't look good on you. You're gaining weight. Oh, you've gotten too thin. Or I recall a moment, a time in which we were having game night at my house. And it was a couples game night. So obviously couples pair together. She said I was too stupid to play the game. So she didn't want to play with me. And I remember before I met her, I was extremely confident. I was doing extremely well in my career and I was very proud of where I was. And she took little opportunities to chip away at my self-esteem until I second guessed everything, until everything became about her approval and, walking on eggshells. Is she going to like this? Or, did I fry this chicken right? Is my outfit going to be okay? Just small moments that kind of made me need her. And I think that she was building up the opportunity to isolate me. And I didn't follow my gut. And it's those small things where your gut is telling you, hey, something's not right here, that you ignore. And I ignored those things. I ignored the humiliation and the small jabs at me, just the little things.
Thank you for sharing that, Brittney. So Imani says her abuse started with the way she looked as well. The way she dressed in life. And then someone asked, you know, do any of you have children? How did the children react to the abuse? Great question.
I have, at the time when I was with my ex, my oldest daughter was 4 years old. And I kind of kept her, when she first hit me, my daughter was away for the summer. And I went down to see her, and I remember I was wearing sunglasses. And she was so excited to see me. She ran and we hugged, and my glasses kind of like shifted on my face, and she's like, "What happened?" And I told her, I said, "I ran into the door by accident." And she was like, "Oh, it's okay, mommy, you're still beautiful," with the black eye. And then it became more and more like bruises, and she was, "Well, what happened? What happened? What happened?" And I ended up mentioning to my ex at the time, you know, I can't keep covering this up. I have to say something. And she's like, "Well, what are you going to tell her? Because if you tell her something and then she runs her mouth, then I would hate to have to put my hands on your daughter." And when she said that, it was shocking. It was shocking. It just filled me with all this fear, and it was important for me to try really hard to get all the strength that I can find to move away from this woman before she do harm to my daughter. So in the process of me trying to get away from her, I ran into a woman who came to my job, and she happened to be the assistant director of a domestic violence shelter downtown in Philadelphia. And I was telling her about my situation. So she told me to wait until she go to work and just pack up a overnight bag for my daughter and she'll come and get me. So I waited until my ex went to work, and I left. And I remember her calling my job like 15, 20 times, just begging to come back, for me to come back home. She's not going to hurt me. She's not going to hurt my daughter anymore. And I believed her. And like Brittney said, they kind of chip at your self-esteem. So by the time I think I had like maybe my fifth black eye, there I had no self-esteem, like just none. No self-esteem, low confidence, just none. So when she told me how much she missed me and she missed the family, I went back. And it was one of the worst mistakes that I made, being with her, because she actually ended up beating up me and my daughter when I came back the next day. So I decided then that it was time for me to prosecute her, because if I couldn't protect myself, I had to protect my daughter. So I got the cops involved the first time. And, back then, I want to say that was like the early 90s. Back then, it was like they didn't give a damn. They, oh, two dykes, let them kill themselves. We don't need to protect them. What they're doing, it's not normal anyway. This is what I'm hearing from cops. It's not natural anyway. So let them kill themselves. Who care? Who cares? So it was a long haul for me, but eventually I got out of it, and I actually had to send my daughter away. I had to send my daughter away for like a year to make sure that she was safe.
So thank you for sharing that, Terri. The question I have next, well, let me just see, there are a couple of comments. Thank you for sharing. So this is one of the challenges I think that makes it a little bit harder. I don't know if it's just easier now. There's more resources now for LGBTQ folks, but I know that there really weren't a lot of resources for us and places to really go. I know when I was experiencing my abuse, it was extremely scary. I didn't really know where to turn. There wasn't a lot of information on the internet. And you're right, if you call the police, they're just kind of like, it's two dykes doing whatever. And you're right, they're not very sympathetic. They act like they don't know what to do. Did Sandi or Brittney, when did you ever get the police involved?
Yes.
Yeah.
The twice I did. The worst incident, my daughter, I'm glad she was not home. It was just after my accident. I was hit by a truck in 2005, and my spine is held together with titanium. And it couldn't have been a year after the injury. I wanted to move to a better place. That's what started it all. I said, I found a better apartment. It's a lot bigger, better neighborhood. And the next thing I know, I heard the words, "You're not going anywhere." I said, "No, we're moving." "No, we're not." And I was thrown in the air. When I landed, I was choke slammed. I had a knee in my chest. If my daughter had been there, my daughter would have stabbed her. Plain and simple. My daughter did not like her, did not like her for me, did not like what my daughter saw it. I didn't see it. My daughter knew it was abusive. I was too close to the situation. After it was like WWE in the bedroom, my clothes were stripped off of me, ripped, not unbuttoned, not cut, ripped off of me. I was choke slammed and thrown outside naked. I had on a pair of socks. And I knocked on my downstairs neighbor's door, and I asked her to call the police. She said, "Are you going to press charges?" I said, "Yes." She called the police. Her son gave me a large shirt to put on because I'm cowering like this in a corner in the vestibule, because when you walked into the apartment, there were 4 doors. And my door was here, her door was right next to mine. I was in the dark corner hoping no one would see me naked. And all I could think of was, if my daughter was home, my daughter would be carried away in handcuffs. I can't do this. I cannot do this to her. I wasn't even thinking about me. I was thinking about her. And it ended up with a restraining order and then prison time after that. So that time and this last time, almost the same incident, different person, almost the same type of situation where I was thrown in the air, landed, kicked, stomped. I called the police because my daughter was standing next to me and witnessed it. My grandson was in the car waiting for me and my daughter to gather my things so I could get in the car. I was leaving that day when I was assaulted. And I called, got a restraining order on this ex. And the divorce proceedings have already been started, and there was jail time involved as well. I had to.
Oh, God. Brittney, when did you get the police involved with your abuser?
So it was when things got to a point where I didn't know if I was going to live or die. So we had been in many altercations where she'd grabbed me or dragged me by my hair, and I would bargain with myself, and say, well, if it happens again, then I'll leave. Or, I want to give myself this amount of time to leave. But there was one night when I found out that she was cheating. The girl that she was cheating with was her ex-girlfriend. She sent me dozens of screenshots, and I, confronted her with them. And when I confronted her with them, she became extremely angry. And she trapped me in my house. I remember I told my family, my sister and my aunt, I'm going back to my apartment. If you guys don't hear from me, I need you to check on me. So I went back to my apartment because she was staying with me at the time to get her things out. And things just escalated from there. It got to a point where she was choking me consistently, to the point where I just knew that I needed to stay awake. I was blacking out and coming in and out of consciousness and just thinking and praying, Lord, just let me stay awake, because I didn't know if I was going to wake up. We got into several physical altercations where I was trying to run away from her. I remember at one point I got so afraid that I ran in my kitchen to get a knife. I'm 5'4" and she was 5'11". So she just essentially ragdolled me and took the knife away. She picked my cat up and grabbed him by the neck and was like, I'll kill him if you try to run again. And she sexually assaulted me. She took my phone. And so at some point throughout the night, she was drinking heavily. So as she went in the kitchen to get more drinks, I was able to run into the bathroom and grab my phone out of her pocket and text my friend and say, I need your help. I'm scared. Call the police, because I didn't know how much time I had. She broke into the bathroom and took my phone from me. And my friend called an Uber. She told the Uber driver I guess was telling her that no one was outside. And she said, just keep circling until you hear screaming. And I kept seeing my phone ring and I was like, well, maybe my Uber driver's outside. So I waited until she wanted to have sex. After she assaulted me, she said, maybe we need to have sex to make it better. If we have sex, we'll be okay. And I told her, I said, okay, well, let me just clean up. And when she got up, I ran for the door and I barely made it out. I had no pants on. I had no shirt. I had no shoes. And I hopped into the moving Uber car. And he drove me to my friend and I told her what happened. We called my aunt and she took me to the police station, and that's how I reported it. And we just pursued prosecution from there. My injuries were so bad after the rape kit that the state attorney in California took my case. And it took months to find her. She even continued to stalk me after that. She'd park outside my job, follow me home. And I had to show up to the police station to get them to do something because the police didn't care. Because again, like the other two women said, there's a stigma attached to being a Black lesbian woman. They just consider us, lower than nothing. There's something that Malcolm X said. He said that the most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most unloved is the Black woman. And that rang true to me when I was standing in that police station because they didn't care. I literally walked up to a detective and I asked him, I said, do you have daughters? Someone assaulted me. Can you at least treat me like you would if I were your daughter? And he took my case. We took it to trial. But she ended up getting off after several months of going to court because the jury decided that it was not physically possible for a woman to sexually assault another woman. This is in California.
So I want to address a question that keeps coming up in the comments. People keep asking, were these masculine identified partners that you were with? Before you answer the question, let me just say this. Anyone is capable of abuse. That's one of the things that we're talking about here tonight. Let's not make stereotypes based on someone's appearance that it's not possible for someone to be abusive because they're femme or they're stud or they're a soft stud or they, are no label. Abuse does not know any gender, any orientation, none of that. So for those you can answer the questions if you want to, ladies, but I just wanted to make sure that folks realize that this shit can happen from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So
for me, it was in one. The different instances were different presentations. One was feminine presenting, one was no label, and one was masculine identifying. So I don't think that presentation has anything to do with it. Like we know to be true, gender and presentation are not mutually exclusive. So just because someone is masculine presenting on the outside doesn't mean that they're not feminine. My partner right now is extremely masculine presenting, but she's the most feminine, kind woman that I know. The person that assaulted me, who I had to prosecute, she showed up to court in a 2-piece skirt sweater set. So I don't think that presentation plays a role. I think it's about the mental health and stability of the abuser. That's the problem at hand.
That's the key. All of my exes were feminine of center except for one.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen. She could be wearing stilettos.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen. It doesn't matter what they look like at all. It doesn't matter how they identify at all. It's what's up here. That's the key. If something up here triggers them, they could be in an evening gown and it will turn ugly real quick.
Thank you for sharing. Let me just go ahead and read some of the comments here. Some folks are saying this is crazy, it's insane. And then D asked the question, is it possible for someone to become conditioned to this behavior? I think so.
I want to address that.
Yeah, sure, please do.
I think that not only is it possible for someone to become conditioned to it, like someone mentioned earlier, the abused can become abusers, and we can also be trained to, are conditioned to identify toxicity as love. That's a lot of times why people stay in abusive relationships, because there is some part of us, which is an extension of some sort of previous trauma that has taught us that that pain or that toxic moment or that level of aggression is their way of showing their love for us. So yes, you can be conditioned to become an abuser. You can also be conditioned to accept abuse as love.
Here's the key for me. I was raised in a 2-parent household, a very abusive, verbally and physically abusive household. So I equated pain and trauma with normalcy. That's what I sought out as I got older and developed romantic relationships. I chose partners who did to me what my father did to my mother, because
exactly
everything I saw was pain. And my mother stayed for over 20 years. And so I didn't think there was, I had no clue that there were other family structures that were unlike mine. So when you see something that is so abusive as normal, that's what you surround yourself with. And when, for me, my father verbally beat me up on a regular basis, there was nothing I could do that was right. So what happened was I sought out validation in someone else, because I never got that acceptance and my validation from my household unit. And the more I sought it out, that's what I attracted. I had zero self-esteem. The only thing you could not tell me was that I was stupid. That I knew. But you could tell me that I was ugly, that I was skinny, that I was fat, that I was whatever, that I wasn't worthy, and I believe it because that's all I saw. And people need to really understand, and I didn't understand it until I read that book, The 4 Agreements. We are our worst abusers. We will abuse ourselves because of the situations that we have surrounded ourselves in, whether it be on purpose or that's how we were raised. We are the ones who will abuse ourselves worse than anyone else. Even if your parents beat you, you still beat yourself up worse than they do. And because of that, the level of abuse that we will tolerate is equal to the level of abuse that we place upon ourselves. If someone abuses us a little bit more, then we'll walk away. But if they abuse us a little bit less, then we abuse ourselves. And that has to do with your own self-esteem. We will tolerate it endlessly. And that's exactly what I did, because I didn't think I was worthy of anything better, because my father told me I wasn't worthy of anything better. All the other males in my family told me I wasn't worthy of anything better. And that's how every last one treated my mother. That's how my brothers treated my mother. So why am I any different? So the relationships I sought out were abusive. And to me, that was normal until it got to be so much that other people started seeing what I could not see. My daughter was my saving grace in each relationship. She was the voice of reason, and she was the reason I walked away from each one. It's all in how you are conditioned, how you see yourself. That's your key.
In that, Sandi, I'm gonna ask one of the questions I see here. Someone asked, have you all ever, hang on, have you all ever, I think the question, I missed it somehow, but it was basically like, have you ever asked your partners to go to therapy, to get counseling?
I did.
I did.
I did.
Go ahead, Terri.
In asking her to go for counseling, it was like in asking her to go to counseling, she thought that I was actually attacking, and antagonizing her to show her that there was a problem. There was an underlying anger problem that she just refused to deal with. And in telling her that she needed to go to counseling was pretty much telling her that you have a problem that you need to address. And she didn't find nothing wrong with the behavior. So that's why she was totally against counseling. If you don't think that anything is wrong with you, then you're not going to be open to try and get any kind of positive reinforcement, feedback, or counseling.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think everyone's different, but I feel like the counseling is not going to work because
no, it's not
wrong with their behavior, like Terri said.
It's not going to work.
The counseling
I asked
over and over. Yeah, I recommend counseling for you so that you can have the strength to leave a situation that you know is not right. So you can yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. Counseling. So the issue I find with that is it creates the idea that the toxic relationship can be saved through counseling. Once somebody has made you the focal point of their abuse, you are nothing less than that to them. And I'm not speaking for all cases, but I'm saying it's necessary to seek counseling for yourself, to identify why you're in this situation and how to get out. But don't waste time that you could be using to move on to something healthier, trying to save someone. Because the reason why we end up staying in these situations for extended periods of time is because we want to save them. We can't save them. They have to want to save themselves.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Exactly. So you brought up something, Brittney, remember a few years ago, there was a hashtag, there was someone, I don't remember how it started, but there was a national conversation about domestic abuse or intimate partner violence. There's different names for it, but it's the same thing. And saying, why did you stay? Why did you stay? And, it's one of the most infuriating questions.
Oh, it is.
So then there was a hashtag that was started saying, why I stayed. Because, it's like putting the blame on
the victim.
So perhaps you talk a little bit about why you stayed. You stayed, and also I'm going to go close my window because I can hear all kinds of crickets. But I'm here.
Okay. Why I stayed? I was trying to come to terms with the fact that it was happening. I think a big issue is that people think that just because a woman is in an abusive relationship that they are weak. And that is because of that weakness that they stay. I want to be clear. The position that I was in my life, in which I was being abused, when I walked into a conference room, people sat at attention. The sound of my heels, caused people to sit up straight. But then I was also going home and getting dragged through the parking lot by my hair. It's not about weakness. It's about, there are different reasons why we stay. There were times in which I thought that I could save her, that if I loved her enough and that I showed her that she could be loved and penetrated her with love, that, she would change. Or bargaining and trying to not even accept the fact that you're in an abusive relationship, because that means you've fallen victim to a stigma that you've played into yourself, that you're that you're indeed weak. We have to eliminate the idea that women stay because they're weak. Or that they didn't do enough or fight hard enough. We run, we scratch, we fight, we kick, we scream, but that doesn't mean that, you know, in those moments we made ourselves safer. That's not why we stayed.
Exactly. I stayed because I didn't think I had anywhere to go. Not having an exit strategy was why I stayed. Not realizing I was so deep into it that I didn't realize that it was my place to begin with. But I knew I needed to leave. I needed to be safe. I wasn't sure if I left, I would survive. I didn't know that if I went to my sister's house, I was always welcome there. What if I was followed there? My sister is disabled. I don't want to bring violence into her home. I don't want my sister to be attacked because I ran to her. I didn't want my mother to be attacked because I ran to her. So trying to keep everyone else safe, remember, I am the lifesaver. I was a 911 paramedic. I was one of 5 Black female paramedics in the entire state of New Jersey. I was the only Black female supervisor in the entire state. Every medical command doctor loved me. I was at every executive meeting. I held power. I saved women who were in abusive relationships. And I knew that their biggest issue was, where am I going to go? And I still live in Philadelphia. I worked in Jersey, lived in Philadelphia. The resources for us were non-existent. So my fear was, where am I going to go where, 1, I'll be safe, and 2, wherever I go, the people I am with will be safe. That's why I stayed as long as I did.
I stayed because I was involved with a police officer. She had a very high rank in the precinct, and you know, when I met her, I was working. I had my own business, and I always wanted to go back to school. And she told me that if I stay home and make sure that the house is clean and, you know, everything was taken care of in the home, then she would pay for me to go to school. So she pretty much controlled the finances and you know, all of that was going on in a relationship. When I did finally get tired, I started going down. The very first time I pressed charges on her, I went to a police precinct that was nowhere near where she lived. I mean, where she worked. However, because they knew her name, they called the precinct and let her know that I came down and I filed charges against her. And somehow the charges was disappearing. Like they never made it to a courtroom. I never, like, I never got the protection. So when I finally, I filed charges, I want to say the 3rd time I filed charges against her, I was coming out the barbershop, and it was actually a lesbian that owned the barbershop, and she was like a dom, and she thought that I was going there, sneaking behind her back to see her, but she actually was cutting my hair. And I was coming out the barbershop, and she found this stick on the ground, just picked it up and just cracked me across my head with the stick. I don't remember too much after that. I do remember waking up in the hospital. It was these 2 cops there. And I remember one of them saying, you should have did your background when you got with her. I didn't know what he meant by that, but they took me to a shelter in Coatesville, PA. And I remember a female detective coming to me, and she took my statements and she said I was wasting my time. They will never prosecute her. You know, the charges, like I said, her charges was disappearing, like never made it in front of a judge, none of that. And I just felt like, okay, I'm never going to be able to prosecute her. Let me go back. The night that I was going back to her, I believe it was my higher power that stepped in. There was a police officer that pulled up to the side that was from Coatesville, and she was talking to me, and she told me that domestic violence shelters in all 50 states have to keep 3 rooms open in the shelters for a woman who's escaping from another state. And when she told me that, she gave me a phone number, and they gave me, they sent me a ticket that night. They paid for my ticket, and my daughter and I went to a shelter that was in Florida. Somehow she found out I was there. Like I said, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. I came back, and I ended up staying again because she didn't want me to work, because her fear of me leaving her for good. She didn't want me to work. So I pretty much stayed for financial reasons. And then I was really afraid for not only for me, but for my child as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me just share a couple of comments here. Cynthia says, often when I fought back, it tormented me to have to lay hands on the woman I loved to defend myself. I blamed myself. I stayed because I honestly didn't feel like I deserved better than what she did. I believed the negative shit she said to me about me. That emotional beat down is a beat.
Wow. Yeah.
Moreland says, when I suggested we go to counseling, she said yes. And while we waited in the lobby before going in, she told me not to tell the lady about our physical fights because she would get kicked out of the army. Okay. So this is wow. Thank you all so much for sharing. I appreciate you sharing. Hopefully this will help someone. If you are, there's just not a lot of information on or data on domestic abuse for people in same gender relationships. But I do have an ebook here that that I can share with you all that has some information that may be able to help you. I'm also going to go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry for cutting you off. Because I still work in that field, every police station in every state that we have now has a LGBT activist who works in the precinct. And if there's a woman in this group or they know someone who is afraid, they can go to the police station, they can call 911 to the house, and they can tell them, can you please send someone from the LGBT division to come, because they're actually trained a certain way to deal with the LGBTQ community. You can send a heterosexual police officer there who won't understand that abuse is just what it is, abuse. It doesn't matter if it's same sex or not. But because you can send a heterosexual police officer there whose Christian beliefs will come in between him or her, giving you the service that you need. So my suggestion to anyone who is going through domestic violence in the same sex, you have the right to call up and ask to speak to someone in the LGBTQ division to come out and offer you the assistance that you need. And if they tell you no, then you need to ask to speak to the next person in charge, because they now have that division specifically geared towards the LGBT community.
So much for sharing that. I did not know that. So
yes.
I'll update my booklet. In the meantime, I'm also sharing here the National Domestic Violence Hotline number for those who may need it, may want to share that. Why don't we do this, ladies? Can we talk a little bit about some red flags or some things that may help women kind of recognize the subtle signs? I know we talked about some of the signs that you saw earlier and kind of ignored. But are there any things that maybe that folks should be looking out for? Maybe they don't realize it, because like we said earlier, that they're in an abusive relationship. I do have a list of signs in my ebook, but I also would like to hear what some of you guys' ideas are that kind of make you see that, okay, maybe this person is abusive and I just didn't realize it.
Isolation.
Yeah.
That's definitely that's the for isolation. If you're used to going out, hanging out with friends, and then all of a sudden they don't want you going out, or well, what time you going to be in? I need to see this person. I need to know who you hanging out with. That right there is, for me, was definitely a start. Why are you so close to these people? So yeah, that's a flag for me.
And it's also the isolation is depending on how much support you have in the LGBT community, if you have any at all. If you don't have any, it's even worse because you feel like you feel alone, and you feel like I know in the past I've been threatened to be outed. Like when I was closeted, there was that threat that, oh, you'll be outed, and I'm going to tell your job, I'm going to tell your people or whoever. So that keeps you. It's more likely to keep you in an abusive relationship because of the fact that if you're closeted, then they can threaten to out you as a way to keep you, in the relationship. Any other signs that maybe someone may be
asking you to change your phone number?
Oh, okay.
Complaining about the friends you have. Why are you spending so much time over your best friend's house? Because the isolation doesn't come in the form of, I want you all to myself. You can't be around anybody. It's the little tiny things. It's those little moves. Each isolation happens in baby steps. It does not happen when they just snatch you away as soon as you start dating. They start asking you to change your phone number, a suggestion to change your phone number. Why don't you deactivate your Facebook? Why don't you deactivate all of your social media? Now you are no longer in contact with certain people. That's how that isolation starts. Also, if you're in a living situation, if they're living with you and all of a sudden you're the one paying everything and they pay zero, when they subtly switch things so that now you have to be there because you're the one who makes the household run, but they're the ones who start dictating what you can and what you cannot do in the home. So now they've got you separated from your friends and family via communication, but now you are ball and chained to the house because, well, you have to pay the bills. It starts with those tiny steps. That's how it started for me.
And I think Terri mentioned for her one of her things, that may be me sounding scratchy. One of the things that she may have mentioned too is the financial control, right? So if you don't have a job, where people tell you, oh, you don't have to work, you got to realize sometimes that if someone that's a way of financial control. If they want you to close your bank account, or they want you all to merge your finances, and they another one I would say that is. Oh, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought for some reason I thought I wasn't on. Another one that I hear very often is people threaten to commit suicide if you leave.
Yes.
They're gonna kill themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
My ex actually did that. She tried it.
Same. I have a list of red flags that I always like to share.
Please share.
Can you hear? Oh, okay. I didn't know if you guys can hear me. One major red flag is attempting to control the trajectory of the relationship. So a lot of times that looks like, for most cases, it'll be rushing into the relationship, and they'll identify that or try to mask it as just saying that they're so romantically attracted to you and they just feel like you're the one, and they'll rush you past your comfort zone. And as lesbians, we're just like, oh, ha, 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 we're U-hauling. U-hauling is a funny joke, but it is not often healthy. And be leery of someone who's willing to move fast and skip steps. They don't know you very well, but they're ready to live with you. Another red flag, as the other ladies mentioned, is isolation. And isolation can be one of those slow and steady things. First, starting with saying, hey, I just want to spend time together, just you and me. And then it turning to, not wanting you to hang out with your friends, to not allowing you to hang out with your friends. And it's a progression of control, becoming very jealous. And that jealousy, sometimes some of us can think that jealousy is a cute thing. We like it when our partners get a little riled up if someone, flirts with us. But there is a healthy jealousy and there's unhealthy jealousy. And unhealthy jealousy looks like a space in which you're fearful of your partner's reaction if, a stranger looks at you or you speak to someone or even share a kind gesture. Controlling your money, or being verbally or emotionally abusive, those kind of things start out before the physical abuse ever happens. Mm-hmm. So before you have your before they put their hands on you, they've already started breaking you down emotionally, and using their words to beat you up. And it'll start off slowly, you don't look good in that, to, next thing you know, you're being choked or you're being punched. And then, not valuing your things. Pay attention to people who don't value your space, who don't value things that you value. Like, say you have a vase that your grandmother left you and they accidentally break it. All of those little things are red flags, because if someone doesn't value things that are important to you, they also don't value you.
So true. So true.
Thank you for sharing those, Brittney. Those were great. Let me just go ahead and grab some of the other comments. Dee Mitchell says she's seen the signs. Tiffany says, my first girlfriend had so many problems, it was ridiculous. She tried to abuse me, but I fought back. I thought she could control me. She was older than me. She had low self-esteem, insecurity, trust issues, and had no reason to be at all. She just had, hang on here. I don't know why I'm missing. Anyway, she said something about she stayed for a very long time. I didn't grow up in an abusive household at all, but I was always told you protect yourself no matter what. Well, we got into a big argument to the point where she would call one of her so-called friends, telling her that what she was gonna do to me. I started packing, and when she was on the phone, I went and got a knife and hid it on me. She had a habit of running up on me with my back turned. She did it at this time, and I told her she better back off. Okay, so this is a very, very long story here, but it sounds like what she said. If I hadn't left, I would be in jail right now. But I always tell people after that first time they put your hands on you, don't ever give them a second chance to do it again.
Absolutely.
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 Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Let me just see here. I know there was Shamika saying that, if you don't know the signs, pray to God and ask him to show you the red flags, and he will. She says, I moved to Michigan and I thought she loved me the same. She started being so disrespectful and ignoring me. I prayed and Jesus showed me the red flags in 1 month. And my sister called me and asked me about my son, and she got me out. So, a lot of folks can relate to using children to manipulate you. That's one. Threatening self-harm. Shannon says, I have 2 lesbian stud daughters. My daughter was in a relationship with a femme that was abusing her for a year before I found out. How I found out was my daughter was beaten and rushed to the hospital with a busted face. I always told my girls, don't put your hands on a woman. That is freaking crazy. Let me just make sure I haven't missed any other comments here. So suggestions. Right? Any suggestions for folks who, all of this that you've been through, guys, I mean, would kind of make anybody kind of be afraid of getting into another relationship. After you went through all this, where are you now in your romantic life? Like, what's happening there romantically?
I went through a period in which I was toxic for a while to other people. That abuse affected me in a way that it was very difficult to come back from. I'm still having nightmares to this day. What I did was I took some time to explore myself, and I got therapy. And that was the first step, because I had to identify the root of me accepting it for so long, realizing that I was attracted to these toxic traits my father had, because I was still seeking validation from that same energy, and recognizing some holes in what I felt like was my armor and patching those up in therapy. And now I'm in a relationship. I've been in a relationship for 3 years. I live in Michigan with my partner. I moved out here from California, but even moving out here, it took some convincing and some time, because the trust issues don't ever go away. You just learn how to identify the difference between your gut and your trust issues at a certain point.
That's a good point. it took me, I can definitely identify with Brittney, with the, becoming the abuser. It took me to get stabbed and almost lose my life. She kind of, the young lady that she was seeing after me, she was abusing her as well. And she called both of us to the young lady's house because she wanted to give us some items that she had taken from us, that was important. And when she got us there, she stabbed me, and then she stabbed and killed the ex-girlfriend. And then I became really angry because I felt like, had I just stayed with her, then the young lady would still be alive. Or had I told the young lady not to go, she'll still be alive. So I became very angry for a long time. And I knew that I needed to talk to someone. But instead of going and talking to someone, I actually got involved with a woman. And every little thing that she did, it pissed me off, and it just reminded me of the ex. And I started, I started, giving off that behavior that I experienced in my prior relationship. And, the verbal started. And one day I realized I started sounding like my ex. And I think she knocked over my father's urn, and some of my dad's ashes came out. And I just, I got real angry, and I shoved her. And when I shoved her, I said that was it. So I kind of like stepped away from her, and I went back to Jersey, and I stayed with my mom, and I took some time out that I needed. And I want to say I was single for like 3 years, and I got the counseling, and I started talking to other women. I started talking to the young girls in the neighborhood, helping them to identify their self-worth, and in order for them to be able to identify what's really going on in a relationship and the manipulation that an abuser have. And I made peace with myself. I went to the jail, and I visited her, because I knew in order for me to start forgiving her, I had to forgive myself. But I had to go have that conversation with her in the prison. And I had to like really work on me in order for me to get the courage to go to the prison and tell her that I forgive her. So in doing that, in going to the prison and telling her that I forgive her, I definitely forgave myself. And that's what made me become the activist that I am today, to help other women survive. And I mean literally survive, because you can move out of your abuser's home and still end up losing your life. You got to know your worth in order for you to walk away from that and stay away from that. So today I'm definitely an activist, and I rally really big, really hard with LGBTQ funding to bring the awareness to our lesbians and let them know that this is not somewhere you have to be. There are steps that can be taken, and we got to get it out there, because they've been shoving it under the carpet for so many years. And this is why a lot of women stay that's lesbians, because they don't have the outlet. So I fight for them.
And for that, Terri. Sandi, it looks like you're going to say something. Let me unmute you.
Yeah, when I left that relationship, I was angry. I had a lot of hatred built up, and I had to take time to forgive myself for allowing it for so long. Mm-hmm. But then I knew that the common denominator in each of those relationships was me. And I was attracting a certain type of individual. In order to prevent that from happening again, I had to fix me. So I went into intensive therapy. And there was a level of the therapy called PE, prolonged exposure. So you are put back into whatever traumatic situation it was for 90 minutes, and you relive it over and over and over again for 10 weeks. At the end of that, because through all of these relationships, I ended up with PTSD. My symptoms went from severe at the beginning of that therapy to mild to none at the end of that therapy. And then we switched into self-esteem building therapy and knocking down those myths the traumatized little girl in me had, so that when I decide that I'm ready for another relationship, I will look for a healthy relationship because I'm different. So working on, I prefer to stay single, and I'm still single. I'm going to stay that way until I am convinced that I have the highest self-esteem. I have an outlook on life that is positive, and I surround myself with nothing but that, because once I am sure that I'm in that place, then I know that I will not accept anything other than what I deserve. And I know that I deserve that. That was my key.
Thank you. I just want to, I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to say to wrap up. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this. I also want to, thank everyone on here who's watching. Thank you for, sharing this with other folks. Thank you for being open and understanding. Unless you have been through this, it can become difficult to understand, how people can get up in a situation like that. But anybody, literally, we're all intelligent, beautiful women, and you end up in a situation that you just didn't expect. I would say, for those who are in the situation, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Terri, are there any other suggestions you have for folks who, and Brittney, who may be in a situation like this right now, not knowing what to do? What suggestions do you have for them?
My suggestion, if possible, Zamara, I escort a lot of the women to court so that they don't have to be there by themselves to face their abuser. I have a lot of information to help women get out of that situation, where they can go to safe houses and get the help that they need. If possible, I would like to leave my phone number and my email address with you, where you can forward it to them and they can reach out to me, and I can, direct them to where they need to go.
Okay, all right, we can do that. And I know it's very hard sometimes to believe that you deserve better, but I just want to say you do deserve better.
You really do.
Because
you
they
really
played mind games with you. So most of the time you have forgotten. Like I said, look at all these women. These are all amazing, accomplished, intelligent, beautiful women, and who were doing the damn thing at work and in other parts of their lives, but somehow this person managed to convince them that you deserve to be treated like this, right? So I would just say, if you are having any doubt, okay, go and look in the mirror and tell yourself that you deserve better. Remember these women's stories, how they've gotten out of this situation. And it doesn't have to get physical, because you don't need it to get to that point. As soon as you're feeling uncomfortable, you're feeling like your gut instinct is telling you this isn't right, this doesn't feel good, I don't feel comfortable, listen to that. No relationship is worth your life. And like I said, I know some of us, it's hard for because of whatever we grew up with, unresolved issues, trauma as a child or whatever. And if you are an abuser, if you recognize yourself as somebody with issues, anger issues, control issues, because it's about power and control, abuse. Absolutely. Go get some freaking help. Get some help, because it doesn't mean that because you are also a victim, probably, if you are been a victim. So get some help. If you need some support, definitely contact us. I'll send you the ebook and send you some resources from Terri. Terri, we'll get together and put some more resources, because I need to update some stuff that we could do. And again, ladies, thank you so much for sharing your story tonight. Appreciate it. Yeah, and guys, send a message to the page if you have any questions at all. I'll do my best to connect you with as many resources as possible. All right, ladies, have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too.
You too.